evening to you and welcome to Power Brief on this being the 5th day of the month of August, the year 2021. And having a look into the history of Kenya's political terrain in the year 2010, August 5th. Retired President Mwai Kibaki addressed the nation during victory celebrations after provisional results showed that the Yes camp had won with a landslide. And 11 years later, we are gathered into this place, joined by Honorable Jeremiah Kioni, the MP for Ndaragwa, who is also the chairman of the Constitutional Implementation and Oversight Committee in the National Assembly. He's flanked by Mr. Edgar Kosgei, who is a policy and a political analyst. 11 years later, we are sitting here looking into the 2010 Constitution, looking at some of the achievements with a focus on a number of contentious issues that a number of players have been suggesting for change. My name is Cornelius Omuse and I welcome you into this discussion that will help us analyze what has been happening and what is a way forward. This conversation is also live on our Facebook page, CAC TV Kenya, and YouTube is CAC TV Kenya. Gentlemen, welcome to Power Brief tonight.
Thank you,
Thank you very much.
Kioni and Mr. Kosgei. And just to bring some to the attention of our viewers is that Juliana Cherera, Francis Wanderi, Irene Cherop, and Justus Abonyo have been nominated by President Uhuru Kenyatta as commissioners of IEBC, and the names have been presented to members of parliament for some vetting, and therefore something will come after that. Remember, there have been discussions about the composition of the IEBC, and probably these are some of the fulfillment of what is supposed to be done. Looking into that, Mr. Honorable Kioni, last week we were here, and some of the presentations by the National Council of Churches of Kenya, they talked about the IEBC.
Yes.
I don't know if this is part of the fulfillment of adhering to the law.
One is that, again, I want to appreciate your having invited me again this evening to the TV station, and I'm certain with the help of this youthful Kenyan to my right to be able to leave Kenyans better than where they were during the day. Where one of the very thorny issues in this country, and has been thorny since we gave ourselves the second, the multi-party democracy, has always been the issue of elections, and we have struggled over time on how to come up with a team of commissioners to help us navigate through this electoral process, or through our electoral process in the country. And we've come a long way. You remember we had the one party system where leader voting was being conducted by the civil servants. We came and had the Murorongo system, up to where we are, where we were able to anchor in the IEBC in our 2010 Constitution. And without doubt, the implementation of the provisions that relate to IEBC have also had their own challenges. But what happened today, again, after perhaps almost 2 months, or even slightly more than, could easily be more than 2 months of interviews, we now have a panel of, or a team of four commissioners who have been proposed to join the IEBC. You remember that this is, again, it's a backdrop of some court battles, where some people wanted to delay IEBC totally by saying that they didn't have a quorum, but the courts did declare that they have a quorum. The quorum is 3. But again, those who thought that we needed a bigger number than 3 got their way, and now we have the panel of 4, in addition to the existing 3. I was of the view that we should have been able to reduce the commissioners to 5. And in fact, we had done a bill to that effect, but I think the one for the 4 prevailed. And once what you are putting on the table doesn't find its way into the day, you need to give room and support what is there. So it's good that we have the 4 now. They will certainly come before the Committee of Justice and Legal Affairs, and then the names will be presented to Parliament for for a vetting. And we'll see how it goes.
Thank you so much.
We would want to hear about the CVs.
Thank
We
you
want
so
to
much.
see the CVs. We
Honorable
want to
Kioni.
see what
It's
they can do. Yes.
Thank you. Honorable Kosgei, hope you're now ready for elections. You've
Thank
been
you very
pushing
much.
Honorable Kioni for some time.
I like the word honorable. You know, when you introduced Honorable Kioni, you said honorable. When you got to me, you said Mr. I'd like to be introduced like you very soon.
I like the mister.
You like the Mr.?
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
okay.
better
That's
one.
another discussion
Harmony.
altogether. Thank you. Yes. I missed the last name of the person who has been proposed to.
We have Justice Abonyo.
Yes, Justice Abonyo.
Yes.
I saw gender balance. I saw two ladies. There's a Francis, and there's a Justice, and there's a Juliana, and there's an Irene. I saw quickly a gender balance that these people are trying to bring. IEBC is a very important commission in the country because it makes sure that my democratic voice is heard. So whatever they do to choose the people who fit that office, they should do everything. I don't know who is in that committee in Parliament. Nowadays, we know that once people have been proposed and they go to Parliament, they are going to pass through Parliament. Sometimes Parliament doesn't have much to say about it. They don't have, they can't reject a list. But I think...
Why do you believe that they don't have powers to reject the list?
Not even that they don't have powers. They do. Because they are vetted by Parliament. And the Parliament is supposed to raise questions. But nowadays, we know they are going to pass. Because once the president has said, I'm okay with this, then Parliament has to be okay with that. You know, they should try and be independent and come up with reasons why they agree. I know they usually come up with reasons why they agree, but most of the time they don't reject anyone. It just passes through that. And also, we have come from far, from building the IEBC that we have, from civil servants, as Jeremiah Kioni said, civil servants who are helping us to run our elections, to even long time when we used to have Mlolongo system, up to now. Our IEBC now is fully constituted. Last time also we had a problem of the Act, IEBC Act talks about 5, a minimum of 5. But the Constitution talks about a minimum of 3. So what won in the case in the Supreme Court is that we should be having a minimum of 3. So, but for now, we will have 7 commissioners coming in. And we hope that our democratic right is going to be given voice and is going to be heard.
Thank you. We'll keep a keen eye into that. Honorable Kioni and Kosgei, tonight we look into 10 years later, this constitution that we passed in the year 2010. It was promulgated. A number of things have been said about it, the pros and the cons. And what presents its head as we anchor in our show tonight is the arrangement, the structure of the executive. This is the office of the president and the office of the deputy president. Yesterday, the country woke up to some shocking revelations from number 2 in command, that is the deputy president, who was being interviewed in one of the media in this country. And one thing that the deputy president was categorical about it is that his duties were taken away from him and handed over to a cabinet secretary, for that matter. And a number of people actually came up with so many questions regarding what does the law speak about the coordination, the working together of the president and the deputy president. You, as a person who is actually concerned with implementing and oversighting the constitution, one, are you aware, or is it there is a claim of the deputy president true? Or 2, if it's true, then how is it supported by the Kenyan constitution?
Just 2 things on the IEBC. One is that I like the entry that would have or has given it by recognizing the issues of gender balance and the rest, something that I had not paid attention to. But I want to caution that when you look at gender, it is not that you look at just that appointment. Gender balance is an issue that is now, we look at it from a global point of view. You look at appointment across. So that it is not every appointment that you look at. There are some appointments that you actually will have even more of one side than this time you have men. There are times you could end up with just women. And what I think the thing is to pay attention to the total appointments that are being done in all these places so that we do not lose quality just on the altar of gender balance. But this is a case where we were able to pick 2-2, which is a good thing. And again, it will be important to know that the ones in office are male, the 3 commissioners. Yes. So I am throwing this so that we don't have people coming to say, we now have, we have 5 men and 3 ladies. I think you look at it in totality, you look at it across the board, yeah. But a good observation. The piece of legislation that proposed 5 was a bill that we had done as CIOC, but the act that was eventually passed was one done by JLAC, which contained 7. Ours had proposed 5. It hasn't quite died, but going forward it may just lapse. The other thing that is good is that Parliament can fail to approve the nominees from the President. But when work has been done properly and Kenyans saw it happening, it is not, you don't prove your worth by rejecting. You can also prove your worth by allowing what has been done to go through. Of course, we go through our own process of vetting, where we call in public participation or public hearing, and people with any issue on any person will be invited to come and give. And when all those things are heard and weighed, then the approval processes goes through. And finally on it is that you remember in our last sitting we had the issues of boundaries of constituencies. And when we had a meeting with the IBC, one of the things they did raise was that, or what came out is there being few in the commission. Now that they have, in a number of days, they should be full house. I hope they'll be able to address this issue of constituency boundaries, which is becoming a very thorny issue. And I can tell you that when the whole weight of it is understood by Kenyans, that you may be voting for a constituency code there for the last time, come to next year, August, and the name of that will be lost forever. Or Mukuraine will be lost forever. Budaragi, Vihiga, Voi, North Hall, Mwateta, Mwatate. If it dawns on the Kenyans that actually they could lose that history forever, and that you may exist under a new name after the next boundaries review, then the whole country will understand why I am saying that this is actually a crisis that we are walking into slowly. And in the wisdom of many, it's best to avoid the crisis by suggesting solutions when you can discuss before it is too late. Appointing IBC commissioners at this time in the day, is certainly not also a good thing. We should have done this much earlier, because there's a lot that would have been done by IBC by now. And I say this because I can tell you, when over now 30 constituencies, there are actually over 40 constituencies, when members or Kenyans in those constituencies, when it dawns on them that you are telling them that with the next boundary review, they are gone from the map of Kenya forever. There will not be bursaries coming from their constituency office. There will not be the rare money, the rural roads committee or the committee of roads, we call it the KERA. The KERA resources that come to the constituency are gone. All these things are taken away from you, including the fact that you'd have to take 2-3 matatus to go and see your member of parliament from the neighboring constituency. When you know that you have lost your identity, I tell you, it will be very difficult to convince many Kenyans to go queue to vote, because it will not be making any sense. But maybe that you would want us to come back to it. But just I wanted to say quickly that one of the reasons why, and I will make it very short, why did we say that the president must have a running mate before the day of voting? Because the second president of the Republic of Kenya, Daniel Toroitich arap Moi the Great, he at one point remained without a vice president for more than 1.5 years. And it was in our mind that that was a very dangerous thing. What would have become of the country if, for any reason, he had been unable to perform his functions as a president? So we then said, so that we are never treated or held at ransom by anybody, let us have the deputy president as a running mate and identified by the president way before he is allowed to run. Two things happen. You are, as you vote for the president, you are also giving some okay to his deputy. You are also giving certainty to the country, so that we are not in a situation of paralysis. So I want to say two quick things. One is that when you do that and you are appointing a deputy, the deputy has no functions. And Kenyans need to understand, including the deputy governor, they have no functions given to them, because their work is to deputize the president or the governor. It is the governor, if he so wishes, who can assign the deputy work, and including the deputy president. But there is no constitutional mandate duties that are given to the, assigned functions assigned to that office, and equally that of the deputy governor. For this reason, if you have an office that you have constitutional mandate, and it is in the constitution, then you've created two centers of power in a country. The country will get into a crisis. So when the DP says that his functions that he was doing under the first term of office were taken away from him and given to Matiang'i, that is in the prerogative of the president. He can reorganize his government in whichever way. He may decide to use the president to at one time, I saw the vice president also was doing a tour, visit, thank you for that, shuttle diplomacy, move around the country and do some kind of work that he can be told to do with other offices. Or he can be assigned duties even within the country to do 1, 2, 3. Look at the case of the United States or the US. What work was given to Kamala Harris the other day? She was told to deal with the issue of the border between Mexico and the US. So you can, as a vice president or a deputy president, you can be assigned duties at any given time by your boss. And finally, so that Edgar can weigh on this, we have to be very careful so that we don't have an office that brings paralysis in the country. It should not polarize us, that office. And I can tell you, as a chairman of CIOC, my mind quickly went to an overdrive. We are okay because the office is still there, and the DP is still functioning. But what would become to us if we have a personality who then decides to say, I am also a deputy president, decides to, it can be very tricky. It can bring the country down. So perhaps, I'm saying perhaps, we may want to deal with the how would that function? You cannot remove the deputy president other than through impeachment. How else can we deal with that office? Not the current, but in the future, so that we don't have a situation where a country can be brought to a standstill when two offices are at loggerheads. So I think it's an issue, and it's good that you have brought it up, but it is also important that to know that as a deputy president, you are under a 24-hour directive or direction by the president.
Thank you, Honorable.
And your private life is taken away from you. When you take the position of the president and the deputy, you actually have no private life. Because at any given time you can be called to do something, and the Kenyans would be expecting. We go to sleep and sleep well because we have a president who is in charge of everything. What about if we start to take leave and I'm also asleep, and we're invited and he's on leave? So you cannot talk about a very private life when you're holding these two offices.
Thank you. Now, when we'll come back to you, Honorable Kioni, to look into what surrounded his trip to Uganda, to a point that he did not make it there. But Mr. Edgar, what Honorable Kioni has spoken about, the powers of the president and what the deputy president is supposed to do. There is one thing about our political history and realignments where an individual says, I brought in 3 million votes from my community, as politicians usually talk about, and then the president brought this number. Actually, the issue of the numbers have been there for a long time, to a point that if you bring any running mate, then your calculation might not really go to a better point. Is this the basis that probably the deputy president is relying on when he talks of, I helped in forming this government?
When I was coming here, that thing came to my mind, where two politicians in the country came together to form a government. One politician came with a huge following. Another one came with a huge following. So they decided who was to become president. All of a sudden, one went to a higher office, another one went to a lower office. And these are brothers who came together as equals. Another one who was given powers beyond decided now to be the boss and treat this other one as something else. Now, Honorable Jeremiah Kioni has spoken about the position of the president having every duty under the sun in Kenya to run the government, and the deputy is the principal assistant. The mistake came in the beginning, where a politician chose a politician with ambitions to unseat the politician to sit at a lower seat. Wrong. There are instances where you choose an academic. Are we looking at... I heard the Honorable talking about Moi being alone for 1.5 years. And they decided to come up with a law to curb such a vacuum. The problem is when we look at personalities. Right now they are looking at William Ruto to square that office because William Ruto has done 1, 2, 3, 4. The failure in this is the personalities. It's not the office in itself. When you are smart enough to pick a running mate who doesn't have your ambitions, then you can save the country from such an embarrassment that we saw yesterday.
Just something over the issue of personality.
Yes.
When it comes to personality, I think Honorable Kioni will have to weigh in a little bit. It has to do a lot with psychologists. But don't you think that you might end up getting wrong diagnosis? Because, for instance, Honorable Kioni is planning to be the next president. I know him as a calm man who doesn't shout.
It's easy.
And probably that could be his tactic to rise to the position of presidency. And when he rises there, you wonder, is this the Kioni, the calm, composed person? Can we really just cut it in a few seconds?
Yeah, without doubt. And, you see, you cultivate that personality over time. And the character of the individual is certainly part of what forms the personality. And when you are picking a running mate, and I can talk this from some experience, you have to look for the chemistry. Because if you don't have a chemistry, it can't work. That is very, very crucial. You do not want a disruptive person. So you also need to do some good homework so that you discover in good time whether the person you are picking is a pretender well, I see is a schema. Or I'm picking this from the headline of the Nation today. Or is a person who would help you deliver on what you promise to Kenyans. So the personality is very, very crucial. But the only other thing is that it's not very easy for you to pick a person outside politics in our current setting, and then you're able to convince Kenyans. Kenyans want to deal with persons they have seen over time. But they actually, I will tell you, they don't want to pick individuals and experiment, and you don't even want people to, you don't want to experiment with a person at that high office. So it will be difficult for our current system to find a presidential candidate picking a professor from the university like it was done with George Saitoti, Professor George Saitoti and the rest, or Professor Karanja. I think for a time he was also a vice president, Dr. Karanja. So that will form part of our history. I don't see it happening going forward. The personalities will be picked, and they will be picked from the political field. And I see people trying a lot of these things, but even when you talk to ordinary people, when they say, I am looking for the seat, like I saw somebody like Kapoko the other saying, Ata mimi ninatosha. And you see the people at the market, wanakaa namna hiyo, wanasema sawa, ni kweli. I'm not saying that they rejected or said yes, but they actually reflect, they know what kind of a personality, what personality you carry around, and what kind of a person are you. And one has to be very, very careful when you're picking and running it, because it can also do away with a chunk of your votes. Not just that alone, because there is also the issue of picking a person, a leader from a community that may have decided in a different direction. Again, that may also not attract votes. So, without doubt, the picking of a deputy president is to help you build on numbers also, but also build on the character of your office, bring in energy, and now going forward, also it must be a person who bring in peace and some coexistence. You'll be seeing people asking, na hii itakuwa kama ile ingine ilikuwa ya korokoro, ama bere ama watakaa namna gani. So all these things will play. But I believe that at a given time in future, we will need to address the relationship. How can we, what kind of legislative arrangement can be put to ensure that this kind of defiance is not seen again going into the future?
Thank you very much. We go for a quick commercial break. 11 years later, after the promulgation of Kenya's new constitution, that is the 2010 constitution, a number of things have happened. That is sometimes the push and pull between the executive and the judiciary, and sometimes the push and pull within the executive. And our guests tonight are trying to help us on what is the way forward, because even if something is good or even if something is bad as a country, we have to find a way forward. Keep it on CAK TV.
PCA Shalom Model Academy is a faith-based day school which is anchored on Christian principles. Currently, our classes are running from playgroup PP1 up to class 6. From July this year, we shall have class 7, and next year, May, we shall have our first candidate class. We nurture a holistic child, that is physically, socially, emotionally, and spiritually. Our school has the best facilities to be able to implement the competency-based curriculum and the 844 system of education.
We offer education that provides opportunities for the learner to develop to the full potential. We promote acquisition of values geared toward developing a self-disciplined and ethical citizens. We provide inclusive and equitable access to quality and differentiated education, including learners with special and educational needs and disabilities.
We train kids in games such as volleyball, football, netball, geomax, and miniball. We also train kids in clubs such as French Club, Scouts Club, Music Club, and Drama Club.
Our pupils within Kabete, Kikuyu, and its environs are facilitated with school transport that is well coordinated by our very able team. Our interviews are ongoing for all classes at an affordable fee. We are giving a good offer on fee payment for those ones joining class 7 this July.
We are very proud to be affiliated to PCEA Shalom Model Academy, Zambezi.
Inasemekana mtafutaji hachoki.
Hakuna kazi rahisi, kazi zote ni ngumu.
Hakuna kitu mwanamume anafanya hapa sisi tunashindwa kufanya. Hakuna.
Akichoka kesha pata.
We only get limited in the mind. Exactly. Mimi nasema my space, my creation, I become.
Ungana nasi kwenye kipindi cha Kazi na Mali ambapo tunakuhimiza.
Bado safari iko.
Tunang'ang'ana. Kukuhamasisha.
Jua kali tunatengeneza vitu ambazo zinapatikana katika kila nyumba. Hata nyumba kuu ya Kenya State House utapata mali ya jua kali ziko huko.
Na kukuelimisha kuhusu sekta mbalimbali zinazounda nguzo kuu za uchumi wa nchi kwa jumla.
Kama association tunawahimiza kabisa kila mtu awe na ile card ya insurance ambayo ni ya serikali.
Usikose Kazi na Mali kila siku ya Jumanne saa 1:30 jioni hapa KAK TV.
Welcome back and many thanks for tuning in here on KAK TV, that is on Power Brief. Just to look into some of your comments, we have Wangina, she says wisdom. We have Mercy Patrick watching from Nyandarua County. Thank you, Mercy. We have Stephen Mbugwa all the way from Ngong. We have Robinson Nganga all the way from Kimbo, Juja. And we have Reverend James L. Motokai. Anasema Mheshimiwa Kioni, that's okay. And also Mr. Edgar Kosgei. Honorable Kosgei.
Thank you. Just go on.
I've just anointed you on the show tonight. The anointing has flown from this place to that place. Honorable Kioni has given his submission towards on how this office of the president, the executive office of the president, can be operating moving forward harmoniously, and he has hinted on what can be done. On your part, you are submitting your overview on what you think should be done so that to avoid what has been seen in the recent days where like there are two centers of power.
Now, this is my thinking. When you want to run for president, make sure you build yourself first so that you don't have to rely on another person to give you numbers. This is where we make the biggest mistake, because Honorable Jeremiah is saying that you need to depend on the other person. The deputy should give you numbers. This is where the mistake is. And Mo used to do really well, because you see, he had Professor George Saitoti, Dr. Karanja, and so and so. So they did not come with baggage. That is what I'm trying to say. If we now start looking at personalities and we see how we should fire William Ruto and how we should change the constitution to allow the president to fire, it will let us now move forward and suggest on ways that we can build that office. Chemistry, the one that he's talking about. These two were friends. They talked about Yako Kumi, Yangu Kumi. And they were brothers. You know, They were in sync. They were taking videos together in a studio. But what happened to this chemistry? Chemistry is not enough. What is enough to look at our ambitions and whether you will be an impediment to your deputy for these ambitions. So,
to your deputy or to your senior, or both?
Yes. Fahali wawili wasiwekwe pamoja. And when you are running for president, don't try something like that. Don't.
Thank you so much. We move now from the National Assembly. We make our way into the judiciary. We've seen a lot since Chief Justice Emeritus, that is Dr. David Maraga, took over. We've been having issues, words coming from this end and words coming from the other end. We've had camps that have been on the side of the judiciary, other camp on the side of the executive. Questions kept on coming up that yes, there are two arms of government, and someone posed a question I asked, but I never found an answer. Maybe tonight you'll help us to get an answer. They talked of what is the practicality of having independence, that we have three arms, that these arms are independent on their own, that there's no one arm which can come now and say, here is a final decision. How practical is it as per the law harmonization, the Commonwealth law?
2-3 things then that when you say Moi and Saitoti and Dr. Karaja, remember that was under the old constitution. Picking of the vice president was his own prerogative. It was, he had a free hand to pick and fire. And our new constitution, it is free to pick but not to fire. Perhaps we may want to introduce, and it is important to say that any constitution amendment you introduce on that office will not affect Deputy President William Ruto. So that in the event of somebody coming up with a proposed amendment, it is not to deal with the sitting. It can only be for the future. And I am thinking that perhaps the President may want to have some powers to initiate a dismissal of his deputy for the reason that they are not able to work together, but then with approval of either of Parliament. So that kind of thing, so that it's not arbitrary. It needs to have convinced the country that this is not working. Then, of course, that will also call on the deputy to also be careful with the things that he does when he's in office. And of course, the issue of insubordination must be something that one would be very careful about. I am happy when you talk about kumi and taking videos together, and you have to take videos together with your presidential candidate because it's a package you are selling. It doesn't quite say that you have a chemistry. You can even wear the same shirts, same designer, same specs. You can wear high heels or whatever it is you want to do, but you are trying to deal with optics. And when you say 10-10, by the way, for your record, because I know this we forgot conveniently, we have a signed document, myself and Musalia, signed letter that was signed by William Ruto, and the president also signed, handing over power to William and to Musalia. Forget about here kuambiwa na mdomo. The one from Musalia is signed, written, saying we now are going to have you as the president. And this is going to be the sharing of government in a document. So kwa hivyo kwa siasa, kama how you are not in control, always know that things can be said 100 times. And doesn't mean that I can even show that I really hate you. Not for purposes because I hate you, but it is really the optics to ensure that you want to preside, and to preside you must prefer. The judiciary, a quick one, is that a fundamental change happened in our country 2010, and like many of us, even those in the judiciary have not woken up to it. 2010 Constitution says that even when you talk of three arms of government, the person who is above all of them is the Wajiko, the Kenyan. Sovereign will of the people is supreme. They can do what they want with the judiciary, with the executive, with Parliament. That was not the case under the old constitution. Under the new constitution, that power was given to the Kenyan, and the Kenyans can always initiate changes when they think they should. And you cannot then come and say you do not have authority to change this. They can decide to do away with the judiciary or reconfigure it, parliament, executive, civil service, whatever. Of course, through a known process that is provided for in the Constitution and perhaps in some of the statutes that we have. And I think we have had the thought that you have brought out very well, that we have those three arms of government. And sometimes I've seen the leaders of the three arms of government really saying, I'm independent. Remember, you are independent in a country called Kenya. You are also independent in a country called Kenya. And the other one is independent in a country called Kenya. If you just play your independence blindly, you will collapse the systems. Independence, yes, but there is complementarity. If you cannot be able to know that you need the complementation from the other, or you need the other arm for this whole unit to function, then you have missed the big game. You have the independence of making decisions, but these decisions affect the country called Kenya. Let me tell you one of the things that you can look at and wonder what is going through. For example, you have a case in court saying that IEBC has no quorum. And IEBC is the one that's supposed to conduct elections. Yes? And you are in the judicial, so you declare the IEBC unconstitutional. Then when you are still there, and the IEBC issue has not been sorted out, you then go ahead and declare parliament unconstitutional. Yes? So they're supposed to go home. And IEBC is supposed to, has no quorum. So if then you decide to fill in parliament, you are going to use which institution is going to do that? Are you going to call in the church ministers to come and conduct the elections? Or how are you? So you must look at these things. You cannot just say we are independent. You must enter judgments that you are in a country called Kenya, and the judgments that you also enter must be for the general good of the country. Again, we had this issue where, like the letter that was written by Maraga, and he said parliament is unconstitutional, must go home, and who is holding on it? And you know, while we want to say that all judgments must be, or executed, must be obeyed, and anything to the contrary is contempt of the judiciary or the court, the president has also the responsibility of whether do you want to collapse the country, or is this for the good of this nation? If he had dissolved parliament because we had not fulfilled the two-thirds gender rule, what would happen if again another parliament comes and it's not also on the same? I think it is easier to continue. It is better, not easier. It's better to continue forcing a solution. And one of the solutions is perhaps what was contained in the BBI. I think in a way there was a solution that had been worked out. And that is what the judiciary needed to continue pushing, and because there is that, the judiciary needed to have that extra eye on parliament so that parliament doesn't go off completely. But again, you cannot throw the country into a crisis, because once we are in a crisis, where are you going to apply the law?
Thank you so much, Honorable Kioni. Honorable Koski, thank you. Regarding what Honorable Kioni has spoken about, the emergency powers.
Yes.
That here we have three arms, and there's no complementarity. It's not a must for people to complement each other.
It is the most mature thing.
It's not a must.
It's the most expected. If you don't,
here now,
you have no country.
The country has found itself into a standstill, and the president says, let's go route B, because the constitution talks of the president being the head of state and the government. And when you talk of the government, judiciary, National Assembly, the Senate, and also every other arms are under the government. Do you agree with that, or you believe that let each and every arm operate on their own?
I agree with what Mheshimiwa said, that Wanjiku has every power under the sun. The powers of Wanjiku are donated to the president through a democracy, voting and stuff. But those powers are limited. The power to appoint the president of another arm of government is not in him. the process of electing another president of another arm of government is another process altogether. Otherwise, the head of state is not absolute. That's why the Constitution tries to tell the sitting president that this and this and this is what you can do and this is what you can't do. Dissolving parliament, advising the president to dissolve parliament is a prerogative of the Chief Justice. David Maraga did his part because the law required him to do exactly that. Because there is a threshold for dissolving parliament. And this sitting government had reached the threshold, and the advice was to be given anyway, even if a crisis was looming. But President Kenyatta said he was not going to dissolve it. There is another president of the legislature that is the speaker, who is also appointed through a different process. Now, the problem comes in when the head of state is a politician and the head of judiciary is not a politician, and the head of the legislature is a quasi-politician who does not understand really well how politics go and is not able to play his politics well. Then President Kenyatta plays his politics and outmaneuvers the two other presidents and twists the two other presidents, and they are not listening to each other. This is where we are, where one is smarter than the other one. They are not complementing each other. There are proposals that I could make.
In summary, as we go to a very crucial part.
Yes. One of them is making an independent judiciary fund of a certain percentage to the GDP or to the budget.
So you're inviting ombudsman in another way?
No, I'm saying instead of the executive dictating 17 billion to the judiciary, let us say it is 3% of your budget. Your budget is 1 trillion. 3% is around 30 billion.
How will that save the push and pull?
It will save the push and pull because Maraga used to ask for money from morning to evening 24/7. We don't have money. We don't have money.
How about on the part that probably the judiciary, because at some point,
yes,
the head of state was very particular. He stood up and he talked of, I have done all that could be done. We present to you even people with tangible evidence that they have stolen, they have done ABCD, but the judiciary releases them on bail.
The work of prosecution is not the judiciary. I am not here standing for judiciary, but the work of prosecution is not the judiciary. It is the director of public prosecution to come up with satisfactory research on a case and present it to a judge. A judge is someone who sees whether you have to go this direction or this direction.
Thank you. On the technicality on how the judiciary works, probably the relationship between the executive, the judiciary, the prosecution and the processes, we shall have a date on that.
Okay.
You are giving your proposals on how can this be solved amicably before we come to a very heated point, which is even dictating the next year's elections.
I have given one. Separate the dictates of money, because the executive is the one that determines whether they breathe or not. Whether you have 10 billion or 17 billion. Separate it. Number two, a judge is not a politician. You cannot expect them to understand body language. In politics, you understand what I am not saying. Judges don't do that. And they can't fight all these small battles. So we don't go not appointing judges because of politics. We separate politics from the judges. And we move forward as a nation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Edgar. Honorable Kioni, on cohesion and integration, part of the reason as to why the 2010 Constitution was promulgated was in a way to save the country where you could find that appointments, privileges, and a number of things are centralized within a particular community, or maybe the ethnic lines, as a number of complainants have been putting it. They talk of we are not receiving appointments, but the new constitution talked of it shouldn't, this percentage has to be here, the issue of the gender, but especially the issue of ethnicity when it comes to national appointments under the new constitution. Even when you go to the elections, people talk of how wamekula sana, it's also our time to go and eat. And you realize that even voting, what is even hindering a particular candidate from getting a running mate who does not have a community backup and anybody can elect this candidate is the issue that if one of us is there, then I'm assured of getting something. How do we address this thing? Do we come up with a formula? For instance, let's talk of a particular parastatal. We talk of if the composition is 70 people of appointees, and we have this percentage of people coming from this area, if it happens like that, then someone is automatically disqualified from applying or from getting there. How do we address this issue to ensure that at least, even if Kioni becomes the president, Edgar or someone else, someone is secure?
Again, I say 2-3 things on the judiciary, that every arm of government, in fact, I think it's only Parliament that has not operationalized that part of the constitution, has a FAD. We have the consolidated FAD, we have the judicial FAD, and there should be a parliamentary FAD, so that every of the arms of government is able to control its own money or its own budget. But that budget must be passed by a given team. So when you say you put a percentage there, we are not living the reality of times. So the work of Parliament is to pass that budget, and then the executive gives that money that was passed by budget. Again, to think that Parliament can be totally independent of the executive is another thing somewhere in the air. You cannot, because when you are looking for votes, you look for votes as a party. And once you have a party, the party is the one in the executive, and it is the one in Parliament. And there is also within the Political Parties Act, you also expected to behave in a given manner, outside which you then become liable for fine, for expulsion, for suspension. So it's a really thin thing. You really want to understand how this whole system works, because some of these ideal situations do not exist in life, and I think that is that's important. When you talk about the judges also, I think this is an important thing that you brought out. You mentioned the office of the ombudsman.
In summary, time is catching
up
with
us. Very summary.
You
see, we say the sovereign will of the people. Sovereign will belongs to the people, or the sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya. So when I answer to Kenyans directly every 5 years, the president does the same. Where does the judiciary answer? You can easily become a rogue person if there is no way of controlling you. There is the JSC, the Judicial Service Commission, that is supposed to operate them. But again, Judicial Service Commission made of the same people in the same institution. Some improvement would certainly need to be done, one way or another. I believe so. So that even as a judge sits to make a judgment, we are not interested in influencing his mind, but we also want a place where I, as a Kenyan Wajiko, the Wajiko can walk into this office and say, I do not have a mention today, it's not a hearing, but the process, the way I've been treated in the last 10 years in these courts, is wrong. My file has disappeared, all those kind of things. So you need a place where an office, and I think that is what was being suggested. And I'm not saying that it is the only solution. It is one of the things. Cohesion, integration, and the issues. When how I wish that we will get to a situation where perhaps when you people are in places of leadership in this country, you will not get to ask the same question again. Because these are some of the propagandas that have been given to people from the beginning. There were some of the issues that were said to communities so that one community is the other. All jobs are being taken by this community, or these favors are going that way. It is not that it doesn't happen, it does. And but it also now ruins any good intentions that are be there. But it's still happening today. Today. There are individuals who are appointed to offices, and all that they do is appoint people from their own community. And I can tell you, in the 90s and early 2000, there was a lot of flank towards the community. But this, you will be surprised. I give Edgar an opportunity to abode, and the next thing he does is go to his village and appoint somebody from the village. Well, even the people from your village deserve appointment. But when all that you see is your own village, then you really needed to be appointed in the village, not anywhere at a national appointment. It's the Constitution frowns at that behavior, but you cannot registrate on it. It has everything to do with the character of the person given that office. It's that we have not grown. People in positions of authority in this country have not grown to become mature and with the ability to manage those offices. They are the people who will always be looking at that name, so that they are able to tell quickly, this person is from this person, this place and the other. You know, that kind of. How I wish you could just use names that don't speak about you.
Thank you.
And then you have that. But when you talk about cohesion, because this constitution was supposed to help us with cohesion and integrity, by the way, I see people talking about many things. If you have no integrity, you have no business looking for offices, political offices in this country. And again, I know we have some models we are talking, and we also come with another economic model to help the Kenyans. But there is no model that will help corruption. If you are corrupt, get out of the way, then models will work. Because any model with a corrupt individual will never work. Cohesion is crucial. This is why I'm talking about the 27 constituencies. If you are scrapping the constituencies, you can't talk about cohesion in a country.
As you wind up, Honorable Kioni, out of 10, how can you rate, not with words, out of 10, how do you rate the Kenyan Constitution 2010 from the far that he has taken us? Time has caught up with us.
In terms of implementation, or in terms of
the goodies it has brought to the people?
Everybody has said it's one of the best constitutions in the world.
So it's around
in terms
8
of
8 over 10?
9 to 10. You are dealing with a 9 out of 10. But that doesn't mean that we still don't have the 20% that we need to work on.
Thank you very much. Edgar Kosgei, time has caught up with us. How do you put it? 1 of 10 or 10 over 10 because you've been opposing the constitutional changes or the amendments? 10 over 10, 1 over 10?
10.
10 over 10.
I give it 10.
Many thanks.
Yes.
Those are comments from the gentleman, that is Honorable Jeremiah Kioni and Mr. Edgar Kosgei. In a small way, we've tried to look into some of the contentious issues that have been coming out in the Kenya's Constitution of the year 2010. And from Honorable Kioni, who is the chair of the Constitutional Implementation and Oversight Committee, and Mr. Edgar, a number of things have popped up, and on Power Brief, conversations will continue happening on what is supposed to be improved, what is supposed to be added, and what's supposed to be subtracted. We appreciate your overwhelming responses on our social media platforms. I could not read all of them, but we use it to improve on our productions and also on our conversations. For me, Cornelius Omuse, and all that made this production a success, I wish you a very good night and see you next Thursday, God willing. Have a good night.